The blood moon prophecy coming to fruition on January 21st, 2019. Is this a sign of the end times? Maybe Matthew 24 is coming to fruition, or maybe even Revelation 6. Actually, no, it's none of those things. All one has to do is read the Bible or look back at history. Why don't we look back to where the four blood moons all occurring on Jewish high holy days. Here's the book, The Four Blood Moons, Something is About to Change, written October 8th, 2013. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe it's good to look out for the signs and to watch for the things that are coming, just like Jesus says in the rest of Matthew 24, if people would just read it fully through to grasp what the end really means. Just like the parable of the fig tree, Jesus says when you see these things taking place, then you know that the time is near. But the same reason that the Four Blood Moons book came to be nothing, we can look back at Matthew 24 and see what it says about the sun being turned to blood and the moon being turned to blood and the sun darkened. So in Matthew 24, this is what gets people to think that this coming blood moon will be a prophetic sign, where it says in verse 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Now there's a few things to look in on that. First of all, it says immediately after the tribulation of those days. If you read right before in Matthew 24, in the verses prior to that, it speaks of all the things that have to happen before this event will take place. That's the one that Jesus is talking about. Jesus, I don't believe here, is just talking about a random blood moon, a lunar eclipse. That's nothing special. I believe that when it happens, it will happen in an instant, and it will not be a predictable event. The sun will be turned to blood, will not give its light, the moon will be turned to blood, not give its light, and the sun will be darkened. First off, we know the sun isn't being darkened right now, so that's one thing. But also in Matthew 24, it talks about in verse 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of it by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy palace, whoever reads this, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. So the abomination of desolation is when the Antichrist stands in the temple and declares himself to be God. That hasn't happened. The third temple isn't even built yet. So later in 29, in verse 29, when it talks about the moon being darkened, it's not referring to the one coming up on January 21st. That hasn't happened yet. Or how about they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Those things are starting to happen, but they're definitely not happening wide scale. People are not being delivered up to be killed in the United States for being a Christian. We're clearly on that path, but that's not what's going on now. I'm of the firm belief that we are in the beginning of sorrows, like it says in Matthew 24:8. All these are the beginning of sorrows, when there's pestilence, famines, earthquakes in various places, kingdom against kingdom, wars and rumors of wars. That's exactly what we're seeing now. We haven't gone into the tribulation yet. The Antichrist will have to be in power for us to go into the tribulation. And then all these things will go on, and then the sun will not give its light, and the moon will be turned to blood. That's what the Bible is talking about. What's coming up on January 21st is not prophetic, honestly, in my opinion. I really don't believe it is. It's a predictable event. Mainstream science, guys who are just not following God or the Bible, it's a predictable event. It's just a natural occurrence. It'd be like predicting winter and saying that, just like in Matthew 24, it says to pray that your travel isn't in winter. It'd be like if every single time winter was about to happen, people said it was a prophetic event. It's not. There's nothing biblical about that. Or if we look at Revelation 6 as well, it says, I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was great earthquakes, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. Once again, though, you have to use the Bible to define itself. And if you look at the verses prior to that, the four horsemen of the apocalypse are on the earth, killing and plunging and famine and pestilence and dire straits on the earth. Absolutely horrible. Clearly, these times we are moving into, we live in prophetic times. Bible prophecies happening around us all the time. They're trying to build the third temple right now. The U.S. Embassy has moved to Jerusalem for the capital of Israel. I mean, there's tons of prophetic things going on right now, but the sun The predictable lunar blood moon, the lunar eclipse, is not prophetic. I just do not believe that whatsoever. If you look at the rest of the Bible and the things that have to happen before this event, to where Jesus says, look at the sun will be turned to blood and not give its light, you have to look at the other events that take place before that, and those things just haven't happened yet. So many end times prophecies have been fulfilled, but one that we need to always keep our eye on, obviously, is watching for the Antichrist. Once the Antichrist is on the scene, and when people are being delivered up for being followers of Jesus and the mark of the beast is implemented, that's when we need to be looking for the sun and moon darken. And obviously we'll have way bigger things on our plate at that time. People won't even be making videos about it because Christianity will be outlawed. At least with Bible believing, they may allow this New Age Christianity, but not Bible believing Christianity. So people won't even be talking about the blood moons and the sun being darkened, because it's going to be completely obvious that we're living in these times because of everything else that has to take in beforehand. Also, quick note, something that needs an entire video that I'm going to do soon. In Matthew, 24:31, it talks about the rapture. It says, and he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. This clearly states the rapture in this event. It also, just like in Matthew 24:29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, that's when all these things take place. The Great Tribulation has already happened. The Antichrist has already come to the earth. That's when the rapture happens. It's not going to be in the blink of an eye. The Bible also says there'll be a great falling away first, and I'm of a firm belief that it'll be because either things get really bad and people don't get raptured, and they feel like they were they have been misled, but they'll feel like the Bible isn't true because these preachers teaching pre-tribulation rapture isn't biblical whatsoever, so people are going to fall away from their faith. Or it could potentially also be something like a fake alien invasion or contact with fallen angels make their presence totally known. Who knows? But anyways, the rapture will not happen until these other things take place first. That's what the Bible says. I will be making a video on that very soon. Also, just to point out for some references as well, I just don't like when people say that these signs of the Bible are happening and they're not. Kind of like the September 23rd, 2017 Rapture and Revelation 12 sign, a video I made on, which people didn't like clearly. It just wasn't legit. I mean, people say these signs are happening, these biblical signs are happening, and then nothing happens. What a great way to lead people away from the faith, claiming that these biblical end-time signs are happening, and then nothing happens on these dates they set. Jesus says no one knows the day or the hour, not even the angels, not even Jesus, but only his Father in heaven. So these date-setting things, they don't make sense. And again, don't get me wrong. Jesus says look for the signs, just like the fig tree. When you see the signs, you know the end is near. Clearly, we're getting to that time, but these signs are not it. They're just not it. A predictable lunar eclipse, blood moon, it's not it. Just like the Blood Moon's book. Something's about to change in 2013. Yeah, no, nothing happened based off those blood moon prophecies, because if you read the rest of the Bible, many other big things have to happen before that event of the moon being turned to blood is a prophetic event. Every single blood moon that will ever happen is not a prophetic event, even if it falls on a Jewish holy day. It just isn't. Jesus didn't say immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened and there'll be 350 blood moons, and then I'll come and I'll gather my elect. That's just not what he said. It's one single instance, the sun's darkened, the moon will not give its light, and it's after the tribulation of those days. These date-setting signs and these clearly predictable signs are not biblical events. They're just not. There's plenty of Bible prophecy going on. If you're interested, look into those things, because what this is not. Got to read the whole Bible and use it to define itself. Thanks for watching. God bless.
But concerning that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven nor the Son, but the Father only. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates. Truly I say to you, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away.